welcome back to Terrible at Fishing, everybody. So, this week, I actually am in a pretty good mood this week. We got a lot of fun things to talk about. And, the what's happening at Lake of the Woods, which is a sight to behold. We're going to talk about very specific things about fish. So, the more we understand, or you understand, or I understand about fish, the easier it is for us to catch it. And we're going to talk about community radio here in Klamath Falls. So, let's get to the show. All right, well, first off, I thought I'd talk a little bit about, Cold Country Radio here. Community radio. On my YouTube channel, I do have a video on what community radio is, but community radio is a venue for Klamath Falls residents to not only have a voice, but also to listen to other residents. It's a community. And I tell my employees, I've had thousands of employees in my career, thousands. And that's, I have no idea how many thousands, but it's a lot. And every one of them knew my 3 pet peeves: lying late and lazy. And, but they also understood my viewpoint on listening. And I will tell you that there is one thing that every human being on earth has in common, besides we're humans. But when it comes to a trait, every single human on earth wants to be heard. Every one of us. I don't care who you are, good, bad, ugly, pretty, whatever. You want to be heard. And if you want to, when you think about community radio is a place for people to be heard. What a nice thing. It's something that every one of us have in common. And we join together here at community radio, at Gold Country Radio. And what Mike has done is, he's the owner of, he started this radio station. It's an idea. So, it's kind of fun to see ideas. You think about, Renaissance men in history like Leonardo da Vinci, and he discovered the 3, rules of flight, even way back when. And he would draw it out, in his sketches. So this was an idea that was completely unacceptable, thought impossible, and he puts it on paper. The helicopter, the self-driving car. These things are, to be honest, the more research you do about Leonardo da Vinci, the more amazed you are about him. But when you see ideas, it's kind of unbelievable because they're kind of before their time. And community radio is, you hear ideas. And is it before its time or is it after its time? I don't know. I enjoy it. And I like listening to community radio because I get to hear, normal people, talk about what they want to talk about. And that is really cool. And I also like to hear businesses. I like hearing businesses support community radio. And because I know that they understand that people in the community are important. And their opinions are important. The outreach is important. And I support community businesses. I will pay more at a local mom and pop shop. Just because I used to own several businesses. One was a brick and mortar business, and it was called the Wild Bird Center. It was a nature store. We did not sell wild birds. A lot of people thought we did. No, we attracted wild birds. The word wild says you cannot own a wild bird. I know. We rehabbed birds and released them back into the wild. That was a lot of fun. I mean, in my back room, I'd have a ton of birds that I'd take a break from customers, and I'd go in and I'd feed them all and then go back out and help customers in my store. And so I understand the bravery it takes to have a retail store. And it requires a special person to own a retail store, or any store for that matter, a boutique or whatever. Because they're chasing their dream, their idea, their passion, and they're risking a lot of money. A lot of people, they think by owning your own store, you're your own boss. Well, that's not true. Not in the slightest. You are not your own boss. You know who your boss is when you own your own store? Your store. You've relegated authority to an inanimate object. You've relegated it to them. You've given it to them. And your store now becomes your boss. Your inventory is now your boss. Your customers are now your boss. It's just, you are not your boss. you are not. You're not. I mean, it's, a lot of people think, oh, wow, isn't it great to be your own boss? No, because it isn't great to be your own boss. Now, there are rewards, don't get me wrong, but you're never your own boss. That's an illusion, just an illusion. And so when I go in, I love Klamath Falls because there's so many mom and pop stores. I love that. You go into Parker's, and they, it's a locally owned store. You go into the Ledge, Mike, he owns that store, and it's just all these stores, that I enjoy here in Green Bay Bakery just switched ownerships. They retired, Sandy and her husband, and they now have their it's employee owned, which is awesome. Chelly's, it's just one. I can go through stores over and over and over again, and I know the owners, and I love that, and they know me. And when I walk in, they say, "Hey, Mike, how you doing?" And I can respond back. You go to Walmart, forget it. Just forget it. You go into Walmart, and they just don't know you. I go to Sportsman's Warehouse, which is a bigger company, but Bobby, the manager there, knows me. "Hey, Mike, how you doing?" And it feels small. And whenever I ran my stores, I always wanted to make them feel small. Even the Best Buy I ran, which was a number 10 volume in the company. Only 9 stores beat my store's volume. We do $78 million a year in that store. But I made it a point to be on my sales floor and greeted and understood my customers. And people would come in and ask for me, and if I was available, boy, they had my time. So running a business as a small business is important. At least it is to me. I always told my salesmen, make a friend before you even think about making a sale. That's real important. And community radio is making a friend. This radio station reaches out to each and every one of you in Klamath Falls. We want you to, I want you to tell your friends about it. My YouTube channel's the same way. I don't hide nothing. I don't hide nothing. So, And a lot of people find that very refreshing and very annoying because I speak my mind, but I do it in a respectful way. I really do. So when you meet me, don't be shocked. I will give you a hard time until I offend you, and then I know where my limits are. But more than likely, you will get offended. But I will learn from it. But you got to tell me, Mike, you went too far. And I'll know that. And because I care about you, I don't want to do that twice. So, but I have a big mouth. It's the way it is. I'm Italian. Sicilian, Italian. It's just crazy. And we speak before we think. And I do have a brain injury. And sometimes that just gives me a little bit more aggression in my speech. So, this radio station that you're hearing me on, and all these other wonderful people here on the radio station, it's the only radio station, too, that caters to Klamath Falls. I mean, other radio stations has advertising, and they give you a nice music mix, maybe, that you prefer than country music. But here on Gold Country, you will hear fishing reports. You will hear a fishing channel like mine. You will hear hunting channels. You will hear, crafts, and you will just hear things that, what do we call ourselves? Klamath Fallians? KFers? I don't know what we call ourselves. Basiners? How about just people? Neighbors. We'll just call ourselves neighbors. And that's what you hear on Klamath Falls Gold Country Radio. No other radio station that I'm aware of here in town caters to neighbors. So if indeed you are listening to me for the very first time, thank you. We'll get to fishing in a second. But I've been doing this for several months, and I enjoy, hearing feedback from my neighbors, all of you, when I go to the stores. And, my truck says terrible at fishing so, on it. Because, when I go fishing, it's important to set the bar properly. And I had a guy in a parking lot recently see me drive through the parking lot, and I parked. He goes, "Are you terrible at fishing?" I go, "Uh-huh." And he talked. I was happy to talk to him as long as he wanted, and it was just fun to hear feedback from all of you. Now, I do have you. If you go to my YouTube channel, Terrible at Fishing, there's in every video there's a email link, terribleatfishing2019 at gmail.com. You're welcome to give me your thoughts, your ideas, and criticisms. Just be nice. I'm very sensitive. I cry at every movie that's meant to make you cry. I dare anybody to watch The Notebook and not bawl like a baby at the end, or Brian's Song. I mean, there's no way. There's no way. I don't care how. If you don't cry at the end of those two movies, Heartless, no doubt in my mind. You're tougher than I am, that's for sure. Bawl like I was blubbering after The Notebook. Don't do it. Anyway. Enough of that. I'm going to cry. But think about supporting community radio. If you're a business out there, I will get back to fishing in our next segment. I've got a lot in store for you guys, and I think you're going to really enjoy it. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Terrible Wet Fishing. Now, again, at the very beginning of the show, I kind of gave you a little hint about what we're going to talk about. Well, what's happening right now is that we're seeing a change in seasons. And that's why it's hard to catch a fish right now. But, we're heading into the trout season. We really are. We're re-heading into the trout season. And the trout season is our longest season. This is going to be great. And as waters cool down, and it's hit freezing this week, as waters cool down, the cold water fish just they come up, and during the summer season, the warm water sort of pushes them down. Well, now it's different. Trout fishing. I'm a bass guy. So you're going to learn a lot. And, well, maybe not. Because people around here know. Maybe you don't know bass. We'll work on bass later in the season, next year. But let's talk about something. I went steelhead fishing for the very first time in April. In April. It was for my anniversary. My anniversary is in March. And so my wife bought me this wonderful little trip on the Rogue. And I went steelhead fishing for the first time in my life. Well, one thing, I didn't even know what a steelhead was. And I caught 2 big steelhead. I caught a lot of small, rainbow trouts. So, the more I learn about these fish, the more interesting they are. I found out that steelhead trout are a form of rainbow trout. And it's kind of nice because they're huge. These are big, big fish. And they migrate to the ocean through the river systems. And that is really neat. And that's probably why they're very strong and they're very big. Rainbow trout typically remain in fresh water their entire lives, where steelhead do not. They transition from salt water to fresh water, which is quite interesting too. So those ocean-bound migrating fish are known as steelhead trout. The only way to confirm a fish as a steelhead trout is by looking at its scales or by analyzing the chemical composition of it or the ear bones. Well, look at scales. Look at the size too. In my opinion, the offspring of 2 steelhead parents may become purely freshwater form of rainbow trout, which is interesting again. While the offspring of 2 resident freshwater rainbow trout might evolve into a steelhead trout. There's a big word in there. Anadromous. I don't know what that word is. We're just going to skip it. So I'm reading, from FWS, mostly. You hear me talk. But steelhead trout are one of the top 5 recreational fish species in North America and are culturally important to the Native American tribes. So steelhead trout have been known to jump 11 feet into the air when climbing waterfalls on migration runs. Imagine hooking that baby. And that's not in the words. And it can go from 0 to 25 miles per hour in a second. Now, that's there's some torque in that fish. I'm a muscle car guy. That's some torque. The oldest steelhead trout ever captured was 11 years old. And there have been reports of steelhead weighing up to 55 pounds. That's big. To be honest, 55-pounder, you might as well just, you look at your budget and say, we need a bigger boat. So it's interesting about the characteristics of trout. Depending on what phase of their life history strategy they're in, the steelhead live in freshwater rivers and streams, estuaries, and marine environments. Steelhead trout occupy freshwater streams or lakes during spawning and then migrate back through brackish water, which is the mix of salt and fresh, to the open ocean to live during their adult non-spawning phase of their life cycle. So steelhead trout spend most of the year in estuaries or open ocean, only to return to freshwater to spawn. This is really cool. I mean, there is one shark that can do this. It's the bull shark, and I can't remember. I think so. And so, it's for a fish to go from salt to fresh is not a normal thing. There are some really fun fish that I catch. Shad, another one. We'll talk about shad another day. But we're talking about steelhead and trout right now. So what do they eat? So steelhead trout feed on a variety of aquatic and terrestrial invertebrates and small fish. So these are insects, you know. They normally feed on zooplankton, really small stuff. I mean, it amazes me some whales do. When they are young, and as they mature, begin to include fish eggs. Well, fish eggs is kind of what they use, what we used when we went steelhead fishing. They also eat crustaceans like, crawdads, mollusks, small fish, and this is one that I didn't know, even mice. I know. So, next time you go down in the basement and you see a mouse, see if there's a steelhead chasing it. Mice. Excuse me. Have a drink. So there's been reports of steelhead trout weighing up to 55 pounds, which we already said. Steelhead normally reach lengths of 18 to 24 inches, but have been reported reaching lengths of 45 inches. Need a bigger boat. Definitely need a bigger net. Often steelhead trout are more silver in color and grow larger than rainbow trout that remain in fresh water. Very true. The only way to confirm a fish is a steelhead trout is by looking at its scales, by analyzing and then, air bones and stuff like that. I mean, I don't look at ear bones. Some of you may look at ear bones, but I don't. So the life cycle of this, we've already pretty much talked about. Reproduction. Unlike their salmon cousins, which is interesting, it uses the word salmon cousins. Now, I've been told that steelhead is a mix between rainbow trout and salmon. And it is a crossbreed, sort of a when cousins marry type of thing. So steelhead trout got a big word there, we're skipping it, meaning they can spawn multiple times during their life. Interesting. Steelhead return to the estuary or ocean between spawns, but return to their natal stream or the stream where they were born, which, why don't they just say that? Natal. Each time they spawn. Some steelhead spawn in consecutive years, while other steelhead may skip a year between spawning cycles. Those are the old married couples. Life cycles. Yeah. Anyway, steelhead trout have very unique life cycles, and their migration patterns are not fully understood yet. Some steelhead trout may spend several years in the ocean before returning to spawn. Again, old married couples. While others may only spend a few months, this is the newlyweds, in salt water before returning. Additionally, some juvenile steelhead trout may spend up to a year in fresh water before out-migrating to the ocean. while others may leave freshwater within months of hatching. This is not too unfamiliar to humans right here. I mean, I don't know. Excuse me. Steelhead trout are migratory rainbow trout, it says. Rainbow trout. Now, since steelhead are a lot like, well, they are rainbow trout. They're just sort of a when cousins married species. Rainbow trout, typically are resident freshwater fish. In rivers, we usually see rainbow trout anywhere up to 5 pounds in river environments, while lake dwelling can reach up to 20 pounds. I know, pretty big. I guess they burn fat in the rivers. I don't know. You get the smaller ones in the rivers, bigger ones in lakes. And it's great because Upper Klamath, I've seen some heifers, in huge schools in Upper Klamath. So it's, and then you go to places like Fish Lake, you go over to 4 Mile Lake, in other lakes, there's some really big trout there. The coloration is what makes it called a rainbow trout. They're beautiful. They really are. They have this magenta stripe going through its body, and from a white belly on up to through some greens and then up into browns and then a black back. It is a beautiful fish hiding all that color underneath spots. It's a beautiful fish. It really is, but it's very slimy. See, all my bass I kiss when I release. Well, I don't kiss, the trout. But they are beautiful. They really are. It's one of my favorite fish to paint when I paint fish. Baits. Adult fish have a broad reddish stripe along the lateral line from gills to tail. So that's that magenta or red. I think it looks more magenta, but according to what I'm reading here, they say red. And from gills to tail. So right there, and it's more pronounced in breeding males, which is normal. It's just normal to see breeding males color up in any species, whether it be birds or fish or whatever. It's a very common thing because you know why? Because just like humans, girls are into looks. They're only going for the good-looking ones. It's the way it is. The caudal fin is squarish. This is the fins on the back. So the caudal fins are squarish. They go up at a nice slope and then cut off, and only mildly forked. Lake dwelling in another word. Forms are usually more silvery in color and the reddish stripe almost completely gone. So juvenile rainbow trout display par marks or dark vertical bars. Now, Lake of the Woods, they don't have juveniles. They just don't. They don't breed there. Typical of most salmonid juveniles. In some red band and golden trout forms, par marks are typically retained into adulthoods. And we'll talk about brown trouts. They are one of those things that I just love to learn about. Some coastal rainbow trouts, or like in the Columbia River red band trouts, or even we have red band trouts over in the Williamsons. Populations and cutbow hybrids may also display reddish or pink throat markings, similar to cutthroat trout. In many regions, hatchery-bred trout can be distinguished from native trout via the fin clips, and that's true. Fin clipping, is a management tool. It's the back fin. Used to identify hatchery-reared fish. All right, let's talk about brown trout. Now, let me tell you a story about brown trout. I was a couple years ago, and you'll see this on my YouTube channel. I was sort of trolling really, really slow with a lure that I made. It was a silver shad lipless with a willow blade spinner attached to the back tail. And it was about 9:30 in the morning. And I was over by the Aspen Point there over in Lake of the Woods. And I got a hit. And this baby hit me hard. And it didn't feel like a bass, although I was shooting for bass. And it wasn't breaking surface, so I didn't think it was a rainbow trout. And he pulled on it really hard. And I knew I had something big, but I wasn't identifying the play in it, you know. And when I got it up to the boat, it was the biggest fish I'd ever seen on a hook of mine in fresh water. This was a big old fish. And in fact, my net was only 17 inches wide. This fish was another 10 inches longer than my net. And if you watch the video, I'm like, oh, no. And I'm like fighting, because I really thought he was going to fall off hook right in the water because he wasn't fitting in the net. And so I ended up pulling the fish onto my boat on hook with the net. And this was a brown trout. Big old giant hook jaw, 27 inches, about 8-9 pounds. Absolute stunner of a fish. Never have I ever caught a fish that big in fresh water. It was just huge. I mean, you could put your whole small head inside the mouth. It was massive and beautiful. So, brown trout, it is by far the biggest fish in our waterways in this category. And it's earned a reputation as the wariest and wiliest fish to catch. A brookie or cutthroat will often attack flies with gullible abandon. Browns are usually much more discriminating. So how I caught it, don't c'est la vie. The larger specimens or these fish especially are often reclusive, hiding beneath a cut bank or hunkering near the bottom until darkness falls. And that's a big trick too. How I got it at night, actually it was feeding off of a fresh stock of released legal size rainbow trout. That's how I got, that's really why he was where he was when I caught him. And it only emerges to hunt bait fish. So the best time to catch this fish is early morning before sunup, and then after sundown. Now, the beautiful thing about Lake of the Woods is that it's a 24-hour lake. So you can fish it 24 hours a day. It's one of the rare lakes in our state that you can do that. So, again, catching a German brown or a brown trout is very, very, well, some lakes you just can't do it unless you hit it like I hit it. The species, is stocked in waters well outside its range. So a result of the recreation craze and empire building of the 19th century. In fact, the country has, the British actually, they tried to bring the brown trout to Tasmania in 3 attempts to ship trout eggs over to the African continent, finally succeeding in 1864. Fly fishers can now test their wits against these guys on 6 continents. We're fortunate, okay, to have a very good spread of the brown trout. The original range of the brown trout is much larger than most anglers realize, reaching from northern Norway and the White Sea tributaries of Russia south to the Atlas Mountains of North America. The species ranged west as far as Iceland and as far east as the Aral Sea tributaries in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Of course, there are now wild, self-sustaining populations of brown trout in places such as New Zealand, South America, and South Africa. The species first came to the U.S. in 1883, when a New York fish farmer named Fred Mather imported brown trout eggs from Baron Lucius von Baer, president of the German Fishing Society. That's why many folks refer to the fish as German browns. And you've heard me say that already. 2 years later, eggs from Scotland's Loch Leven arrived and were sent to the same three hatcheries. And the prevailing theory is that the genetic stock were mixed to create what Robert Behnke calls the American generic brown trout. In 1884, the release of 4,900 brown trout fry, which is little guys, into Michigan's Baldwin River, a tributary of the Pere Marquette River. Excuse me, I'm speaking all these languages. Represented the first time the species swam free in U.S. waters. So that was in 1884. Although there are currently no recognized subspecies of brown trout, there are three basic morphs, distinct behavioral populations within a species. Those that inhabit freshwater rivers, the Samotruta, Morpho or Fario, lake population, Samotruta, Morpha lacustrine, and the anadromous forms, Samotruta, which is, Samotruta is Latin for brown trout, Morpha truta, which, trout. Browns that spend their lives in the ocean before entering rivers to spawn are called sea trout. The species name means salmon trout and described the Andromedas, I don't know, I can't say that word, Anadromous morph. There's probably an easy way to say that word, but I can't. Resident and anadromous browns that inhabit the same river are genetically identical, and biologists do not yet understand why some migrate to the salt and some stay in the river. Gotta love a good mystery. Throughout its native range, there are populations that are considered unique, even if science doesn't treat them as such. For instance, the ferox trout inhabits nutrient-poor lakes in Great Britain and Ireland, and the gieru is a snail-eating trout of Ireland's Lough Melvin. Some scientists from Northern Ireland consider the gieru a separate species, while Irish authorities, they don't. But records fall fast on this particular catch. It is amazingly big. In general, lake and sea-run fish grow larger than their river-dwelling counterparts. But some tailwaters also grow especially large specimens. The all-tackle world record for a brown trout was held for 17 years by Arkansas angler Howard Rip Collins, with a 40-pound, 4-ounce behemoth caught from the Little Red River in 1992. But that record was then broken 3 times in 4 years. In 2009, Tom Healy landed a 41-pound, 7-ounce brown from Michigan's Big Manistee River, followed a year later by Roger Helland's 41-pound, 8-ounce, got it by an ounce, fish from the Wisconsin side of Lake Michigan. Technically, Healy's and Helland's fish shared the record because a new record must increase the weight by 2 ounces. The current IGFA all-tackle record, a ludicrously fat 44-pound, 5-ounce slob. Was caught by New Zealand angler Seamus Petrie from Ohau Canal in October 2020. There's a picture of it, and there's just it's the fattest. It's a fat fish, guys. All right, but unlikely hybrids of this fish. When the humorous fly fishing character Hank Patterson's jokes about catching a native brown bow, his comment is only half ridiculous because the brown bow actually exists. Geneticists at the University of Washington first created the hybrid in the laboratory in the mid-90s. The game managers throughout the West did some experimental stocking of the new hybrid. There's also a break, a cross between a brown and a laker. I know I've actually heard of these here, breaks. Both of these hybrids are sterile and don't occur in nature. But wherever browns and brook trout swim together, there's the possibility for a tiger trout, a popular game species in the Midwest because they grow fast and fight hard. Although the vast majority of tiger trout are created in hatcheries, anglers in Wisconsin and Michigan routinely catch tigers where no stocking has occurred. Now, you can catch tiger trout at Fish Lake, but it's illegal to keep them. They were introduced as a population control. So the tiger trout, you now know where they came from. Browns and brooks. So a brown and a brook trout hybrid is a tiger trout. Just shows you the voracity of this fish. So fly fishing, something I'm just learning. Most hardcore brown trout anglers know that the diet of the species changes as the fish grow larger. Big deal here. Brown trout begin by eating most invertebrates or insects and crustaceans, but as the fish grows bigger and older, its diet begins to focus on other fish, such as suckers, minnows, sculpins, and other trout, like rainbow trout. Over the past decade, a cadre of big fish hunters, perhaps best exemplified by Kelly Gallup, has focused on throwing huge, often articulated streamer patterns with bizarre names such as heifer groomer and the junkyard dog. So you go big for big, right? Those anglers who don't want to heave half a chicken on an 8 weight can use larger but not monstrous streamers such as conehead woolly buggers, marabou muddlers, and even traditional featherwings such as black ghosts. When salmon or other trout are spawning, egg patterns can also be very effective. So the brown trout, I already told you how I caught mine. It was basically, it was a bass lure. Brown trout, as they get bigger, and they're big at Lake of the Woods, by the way. I think the biggest caught there is 33 1/4 inches. It's a big one. He actually kept it. Mine went back, okay? It's still out there. This time of year, the reason I wanted to go over what a brown trout was is that the brown trout is a fish that can be caught right now, this week, at Lake of the Woods. How do you catch it? Well, they're coming up in the shallows right now because the salmon are spawning. So I told you to go and check out the salmon, right? Well, so is the brown trout. You can catch brown trout in the shallows right now, in the morning and late afternoon. They're coming up. They're eating these big old giant, or these sockeye salmon that are spawning. And what you would do is use a swim bait that looks like a sockeye salmon spawning, red and green. And I make them, and I use them, and you catch them with it. So you're going to troll, Rainbow Bay is what you're going to do. You're just basically going to troll Rainbow Bay and work that area until you catch a monster. Welcome back to Terrible at Fishing. In this last segment, we're going to talk about kokanee. Kokanee. That's right. What is kokanee? Well, kokanee is just a word that is translated as landlocked. So kokanee salmon are landlocked salmon. Typically, a kokanee salmon is a sockeye salmon, and they're beautiful. I mean, typically in the summer and spring is when you want to catch these fish because they are silver. There's really no distinct black spots on the sides, but there can be, and they have a nice, beautiful coloration up on the upper third part of the fish. So sometimes I get them confused with, from a distance, I'll get them confused with rainbow trout. But they actually have a very, they do have some distinctive finning to them. Their life cycle is about 4 years long. Typically, a kokanee salmon or a sockeye salmon that's kokanee rarely gets bigger than 14 inches or so. So typically they're about, a good sized kokanee is 12 to 14 inches. And you can catch these. These are stocked as fries inside at the lakes. And like right now, the males become very rich and red. And they're spawning right now. You'll see the females laying the eggs. And I would suggest if you do catch one, do not hold it over your lap. Because the males will squirt out their stuff and the females will just squirt out all their eggs. They will lay their eggs on clean gravel. That's why you are going to find them right at the main boat ramp at Lake of the Woods. Kokanee mature between 3 to 5 years. And so they typically, when they're basically they don't get real old. So every 5 years, the lakes are planted with these fries. And so these are, holdovers. I guess you can call them holdovers. But when they spawn, they die. I mean, salmon are like that. They starve themselves to death when they spawn. So not all of them spawn every single year. They are kind of hard to catch. I'm not very good at catching sockeye salmon. So these sockeyes are typically an natural Alaskan salmon. They're very, very rich in nutrients. And then of course the West Coast, which is they're farmed and put inside lakes. So it's one of the smaller species of the Pacific salmon. So typically they're again about 12, 14 inches and weighing, I don't know, a couple pounds tops, at Lake of the Woods. They're not going to be real, but they're really delicious. When they're silver, this time of year, they're gelatinous. Don't really recommend eating if you catch one, but they are amazing and beautiful to see this time of year. So seagoing sockeye salmon have iridescent silver flakes on them, a white belly, and a metallic green-blue top, giving them their nickname, blueback salmon. Some fine black speckling, like I was telling you, may occur on the back, but the large spots typical of other Pacific salmon are absent. There are no spots on the fins, including the tail of sockeyes. As sockeye salmon return to their fresh water in their natural spawning grounds when they do migrate, and I'm not aware of them here on the West Coast doing that, but they can, I guess. Their heads turn green and their bodies turn bright red. So that's what you're going to see on the males, okay, up at Lake of the Woods right now. A green head and bright red bodies. They're beautiful. And you'll see that hook jaw on the male. So they have another common name as Alaska is the red salmon. spawning males develop a hump on their back and hook jaws. So, and with tiny visible teeth. So you really don't want to put your hand in it, but they are a smaller fish. I mean, you could with gloves. So the biology of the sockeye salmon are typically generally rear in freshwater lakes for 1 to 3 years, after which they reach the smolt stage and migrate to the ocean. Now, the ones that are kokanee, they can't do that. And as we talked about on other fish within this family of trout and salmon, they need aeration and water movement. So they will spawn onto a pebble bottom, as you're going to see if you go up to Lake of the Woods. But there's no aeration and rotation of the eggs. So what ends up happening is that the eggs just die. They just die. And so do the fish. This is the smorgasbord, the buffet for animals at Lake of the Woods in the next few weeks. And so as these fish die, the animals from the forest will come out and get them. The raptors will get them. And the larger, largemouth bass and the German brown trout will come up and get them. And these fish they die to feed the animals, is what they do. And that's what's so fun about this time of year. Lake of the Woods this time of year is kind of a fun time to go check it out. So, you can catch some brown trout, some largemouth bass, and you could see this spectacle of fish. So when they plant these fries, these fingerlings, other fish are going to be eating them, but there will be a huge population that survive, and because they put so many in the lake. That's the cool thing, because your limit, if you use during the spring and summer, as you use flashers on your line and then a hook and bait, and you troll, your minimum or your maximum is 25, and they taste fantastic. It's a rich, vitamin-filled red meat that again, you don't want the ones that you can catch right now, but wait for the spring and summer and learn how to do this. And I want to learn how to do this. I know a lot of people that catch these, and they taste fantastic. Smoke it, oh my goodness. The fish tastes, just fantastic. And if you could, and this is something you could do, is get some females right now and get the roe, the eggs. And a lot of people will go ahead and harvest the eggs from the females. I mean, you're not doing any harm, really, because the eggs aren't going to hatch. But use the roe and create and roe is just another name for egg, is to create baits for next year. And you could use that bait and catch lots of fish with it. So the roe actually is a good time to harvest it right now. It's a fantastic fish. I would definitely recommend. I mean, I need to learn how to fish it. Right now I'm learning how to fish fly fishing. And maybe in the next couple of years I'll learn how to, fish for kokanee. But a lot of guys do it. They catch a lot of them. Typically they troll with these things called flashers, which are big, shiny things, usually 4 or 5 on a line, and with a hook at the bottom. And these, I guess it would mirror a school of these silver fish. And they gravitate to it, and, they eat. I really having a hard time understanding, that. So I'm sure I will get lots of comments on my YouTube channel and about how to catch kokanee. But the kokanee are a fantastic fish this time of year. They're just beautiful. In their pre-spawn, they jump out in schools like little dolphins at the lake. And it'll get you all excited. You're going to go over there and try to catch them. But again, they're starving themselves to death. So typically, if they hit it, it'll be purely out of instinct. It will not because they're hungry, or you'll end up foul hooking them. And you just you just get excited. But it's actually a beautiful, beautiful sight to see these schools of sockeye salmon arching themselves out of the water, and like little schools of dolphins. I mean, it's just beautiful. And then right now, to see the spawning, method that they use. I mean, you're going to see the females, get on their side and wag their tails in order to create an area, clean it up. And then they're going to lay their eggs, and then a male will come along and fertilize it. And that's what ends up happening right before your eyes. It is a fantastic thing to take your children to Lake of the Woods right now, to let them see a beautiful natural process. Even though it will not, will not germinate. You don't have to tell them that. But it's beautiful to see. I mean, literally, they could pet them right there. So I would definitely tell you to, check out Lake of the Woods. Have some pizza while you're there. I mean, it's got great pizza. This is like the best pizza I've ever tasted in the Western United States. I've traveled the world. I've had pizza in Hong Kong. Okay, I've had pizza in New York and in Chicago and all these other. I mean, I love pizza. Who doesn't love a pizza? Well, Aaron makes one of the best pizzas that you'll ever eat at Lake of the Woods. Really will. I mean, it's just, and for $3.50 a slice, I mean, I think is what he charges. Or just buy a big one. And it'll fill you up. It is a really good thing to do. So try the sockeye, go see the sockeye salmon. All right. Go check them out. Kokanee are landlocked salmons that are farmed and inserted in lakes. And simply for our pleasure. That's why they're put there. Just simply for our pleasure. To catch up to 25 in a day and then, go home and eat it up. Check it out. And easy to clean, too. Very easy to clean a sockeye. You can catch them through the ice. So as ice season happens, we will catch sockeye salmon in February. So be aware and understand, too, that as ice season approaches, and we're getting freezing weather now, the lakes in the next couple months, about in December, they'll start to freeze. And I will have shows on this, but do not walk on ice willy-nilly. Just don't do that. You could die easily. So we will talk about ice fishing and safety as we get closer and closer to this season. And I will be purchasing a lot of interesting stuff as we get closer and closer. So go to my YouTube channel, Terrible at Fishing, and check it out. So I want to thank you guys for giving me the time and then supporting a community radio station like Gold Country. If you have any questions, just go to my YouTube channel and email me with suggestions. And then if you want to support the radio station, then just go to the radio station, goldcountryradio.org. Thank you very much, everybody.